As we draw closer to July, we have to start talking about which fighters should be on one of the most hyped up events in the history of mixed martial arts, the UFC White House card. This event is going to bring unprecedented amounts of attention to the UFC and MMA, although there actually won't be too many people in attendance. Although up to 85,000 people will be able to view the card on large screens at the Ellipse nearby, only a specially selected group of people of around 5,000 VIPs will be allowed to attend the card in person. You know, VIPs like Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Lord Mandelson, the former Prime Minister of
Brazil,
Ehud Barak, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, the former US President Bill Clinton, and of course, the guy who Dana is doing this all for, the Big Don himself. And who knows, maybe the US government will use Elon Musk's AI technology to bring back deceased VIPs like Michael Jackson and Stephen Hawking. I mean, if the Fortnite account of a person who supposedly died in prison back in 2019 was still getting victory royales in 2025 while playing from
Brazil,
surely they could revive them, right? Because otherwise, that would mean that this individual is still alive. And why, yes, these are indeed screenshots of 4chan threads that I was browsing all the way back in 2019, because I was way ahead of the curve on all of this stuff. Autism really is a superpower, isn't it, guys? But anyways, to satisfy the desires of such an important group of VIPs, I want to create a UFC card that truly fits the occasion. So today, we're going to cook up some matchups that will entertain this crowd of fine and morally upstanding people to no end. So without further waiting, let's get started with booking this card. And yes, while I have heard rumors that there's only going to be 6 to 7 matchups for this card, I'm going to be doing a full UFC card's worth of matchups because, you know, just in case we actually do get more matchups, it would be better to have more of them, you know, right? Because it's such a special occasion. And all of those VIPs surely do deserve the full UFC experience. Starting with the early prelims, we have Michael Chandler versus Quillan Salkild. Now, I can already hear the one Michael Chandler fan in the world, which is Michael Chandler himself, by the way, saying, "No man, I'm fighting Conor McGregor in the main event of this card. See you at the top." But no, Chandler, you aren't getting Conor. You gotta come to terms with the fact that you're damaged goods. You got done like one of Diddy's victims by Patty in your last fight, and Patrick himself turned out to be not all that in his fight with what was the worst version of Justin Gaethje that we've ever seen. However, I do believe that Chandler deserves to be on the White House card, because he's the perfect fit to get slimed out cold by Quillan Salkild. And well, let's just say that, as I said in this tweet of mine here, if Chandler's kids are in attendance, we might see one of the most brutal finishes in MMA history to kick off this night of fights. I mean, there is a reason why I made that mini documentary on him, which you watched, by the way. Thanks, Quillan.
Did you enjoy the Unique MMA, the little documentary thing he made of you from your rise and like to the UFC?
The most based MMA fighter one?
Yeah.
That one? Yeah. I love that. I showed everyone that video. It was hilarious. That was so good. It was so good.
But anyways, Salkild will punt Chandler into the canvas and out of the rankings, and maybe, after waking up from being unconscious, we will see Michael doing another desperate, humiliating call-out of Conor McGregor, which would be funny as hell. Anyways, moving on up to the next fight up the card, we have Colby Covington versus Yaroslav Amosov. Now, I think I'm being pretty realistic with these bookings, because there's no way that they're putting 8 title fights on this card like Big Jeffrey's Orange Skin Buddy was suggesting. However, every fight in this card will feature at least one ranked fighter, and I think that this is one of those fights that just needs to happen. First, Colby is going to be gunning as hard as he can to be on the White House card, and since Colby is old news and completely irrelevant to the welterweight division nowadays, it's best to use that opportunity to feed him to Yaroslav Amosov. Now, this matchup should be booked for the White House card for a number of reasons. First, it gets rid of old, washed Colby and brings in Amosov, who is in the prime of his career. Second, there's the bitter rivalry that Colby has with the fighters over at American Top Team, so this fight will likely have some bad blood going into it. And third, it will benefit the VIP audience who is there because Amasov is Ukrainian. And we all know that the goal of the VIP audience for the White House card is to profit from what's going on in that country. I mean, people forget, man. The files show that Big E himself was involved with 2 modeling agencies in Kyiv and Odessa, with Littlest Jeff 1 also emailing the Slovak foreign minister Miroslav Lashak, where he encouraged Miroslav to intercede in Ukrainian politics in the wake of Volodymyr Zelensky's election to the office of president. You know, who knows? Getting Amasov to call for more support to his country in his post-fight interview on the highest profile combat sports event of the year could help push things along, you know, to get NATO to put their troops on the front lines. You know, stuff like that. But anyways, let's now move on up to the top of the early prelims, where we have Alex Perez versus Tim Elliott. So you may have already noticed a trend on this card, but there will be a lot of American fighters getting completely obliterated for much of it, so it's a good idea to book a patriotic American versus American matchup to make sure that at least some Americans win, okay? And well, this fight will be a good booking because it will be between 2 veterans of the flyweight division, and because Tim Elliott himself is calling for this fight. And while Tim Elliott is the man who is responsible for causing me to enter a deep state of unbearable depression, he's also the craftiest unk in the business and deserves a shot at recognition on the biggest stage the UFC has to offer. Plus, this fight would be really easy to book since both Elliott and Perez are managed by Iridium Sports Agency, so I think this is a perfect booking for the early prelims. And yes, this fight does deserve to be above Colby and Chandler because those 2 guys should be thankful just to be able to fight on the White House card despite having done nothing but lose for the past 3 years. Now, this next fight is really important for a variety of reasons, but it's Rose Namajunas versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. No. You might be like, I don't want any women's MMA on the biggest card of the decade. But come on, man. It's going to happen. And besides, the VIP guests are going to need a break in the middle of the card to go to the bathroom, where they can inject themselves with adrenochrome harvested from the blood of abused children. But jokes aside, this matchup can be booked because it's America versus Canada. Both of these women are coming off losses, and while it might not be the best fight, you have to put women's MMA on the card because you just kind of have to. It's kind of like eating your vegetables or taking your meds, schizo. There's just this kind of obligation to have it here, okay? But anyways, moving on up to another fight up the card, we have Khalil Roundtree Jr. versus Jan Blachowicz. The UFC loves to push Khalil, with you know how they gave him that undeserved title shot against Alex Pereira, and how they gave him custom shorts despite not being a champion. But still, Khalil is a fun fighter to watch, win or lose. And I think matching him up against Jan Blachowicz will be pretty entertaining for a fight at the higher weight classes. Jan is coming off that draw to Bogdan Guskov, where he didn't look all that great, while Khalil got KO'd by Yuri in his last fight and should be looking to bounce back. And I mean, both of these guys' backbones are in Muay Thai, so we're going to get to see a stylistically well-paired fight. But I don't have much else to say, so let's move on to the next fight. And that fight is Aljamain Sterling versus Yusuf Zalal. So with Aljo, if you've seen him on Twitter, you would know that his views more or less align with the Big Don's agenda. And well, he voted for his fellow New Yorker in the 2024 election too, so there's that. He's also a former champion too, which will be good. And as I'll talk about later, he trains at the same gym as the guy I have in the co-main event of the card, so they can have the team all there together. I have Yusuf Zalal here because I think Zalal's grappling will match up pretty well with Aljo's, although there's not much else of a reason to have him in this spot. To be honest with you, you could replace him with Steve Garcia, and it might work out just as well or better. But there's also the chance that Aljo just body triangles Garcia and backpacks him to a 30-27 snooze fest decision. But anyways, the featured prelim of the card, and now you might be surprised with this, but I have Derek Lewis versus Josh Hockett in this spot. Now, Josh Hockett isn't ranked and is a little undersized, but the guy is fast and explosive for being a heavyweight. He's also probably better than every heavyweight outside of the top 5, so just say screw it and give him Derek Lewis. I mean, the UFC gave Talison Teixeira a main event against Lewis, and we saw in the Tai Tuivasa fight how bad Talison is. And regardless of who wins, American fighter is going to be able to cap off the prelims with a devastating KO and a funny interview. It's either going to be Josh Hockett glazing the president and all of the VIP guests while conveniently ignoring what's going on in the files, or Derek Lewis talking about how hot his balls are. But now, next, we've got the main card, and you're going to love who I have here. For the opener of the main card, we of course have to have the one, the only, John Silva fighting against Yair Rodriguez. As you're all likely aware, John Silva is a Brazilian fighter who also happens to be a huge fan of
Brazil.
And what better way to use him than as the main card opener of the White House card? Judging by the number of
Brazilians
in the files, I'm sure that there will be many
Brazilians
among the VIP guests cheering for him. And I'm sure that the Big Don himself, who according to the files has been compromised by the state of
Brazil,
would absolutely love watching John Silva KO a Mexican on his lawn. And I mean, seriously, this is a banger fight regardless of any political implications. Two unorthodox strikers going at it in an absolute war. Now, moving on to the main card, I have Bilal Muhammad versus a fully armored M1 Abrams battle tank, complete with a mounted 50 caliber machine gun and 105mm rifled cannon. And now you might initially say, how is it fair or justified in any way to have this fight happen? How does Bilal Muhammad stand a chance against a tank? And well, the answer is that Bilal Muhammad will be allowed to throw rocks. Yes, rocks, because as you may have read in the news, the
Brazilians
defense forces consider having rocks thrown at them as a justification to retaliate with tanks. But dark jokes aside, the actual matchup should be Bilal Muhammad versus Kamaru Usman. These two guys hate each other, and that's because according to reports about the podcast that the welterweight GOAT did with Marty from Nebraska, the Chirac native made Marty bawl his eyes out. And furthermore, getting this matchup booked will prevent the absolute disaster that is Makhachev versus Usman from happening, so there's that benefit too. Now moving on to the feature fight, we have Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. This fight was originally booked for UFC 325. Kayla pulled out due to needing surgery. Kayla is the only American UFC champion. She loves the Big Don and Ayn Rand. They need her on this card. Next. So for the co-main event, there's the fight I want to see, and then the fight the UFC is going to make. The fight I want to see is Petr Yan versus Merab in a trilogy. But the UFC is going to give the opportunity to O'Malley in another undeserved title shot after getting an uneventful win over Song Yadong that arguably could have gone to Song. And now some of you O'Malley glazers might be like, no, don't we need an American challenger to fight the Russian guy at the White House? And yeah, I can see the argument, but you're forgetting that Merab is also an American citizen as well. And I mean, let's compare the two. As I went over in my video on O'Malley, the guy had an ordinary upbringing in the States, was given a bunch of lower level fighters to pad his UFC record and farm highlights, was gifted a robbery decision against Petr Yan in their first fight, won his belt against an overtrained Aljamain Sterling coming off a quick turnaround, then got gifted a title defense against Marlon Vera, who himself was coming off of a single win over Pedro Munoz. And let's contrast that with Merab, an immigrant who came from Georgia, who toiled in construction to pay for his gym fees, who grinded his way to a title shot by going on a 10-fight win streak, beat up O'Malley to win the belt, and strove for greatness by trying to defend his title 4 times in 2025. I mean, if anybody represents the meaning of what it is to grind hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps like your boomer grandfather tells you to, it's Merab. And besides, the VIP guests don't actually care about heritage American identity or anything like that. Rather, they care more about defeating their geopolitical enemy, which is Russia. And that means they don't particularly care whether it's an American or Georgian that gets the job done. And finally, we get to the main event, which will most likely be Ilia Topuria unifying his title with Justin Gaethje's interim belt. As was recently reported, Ilia and his ex-wife, who he found in a Miami club, have come to a settlement on Ilia's terms, so he's indeed going to be coming back. And well, Ilia is just going to publicly execute Justin Gaethje in front of the entire world. Perhaps Justin Gaethje will serve as a human sacrifice to the god of the VIP guests, who is Moloch if you're wondering. And yes, that is the entire fight card. Now, I'll admit, I did clickbait you hard with a thumbnail featuring the island owner and the art school dropout, but hey, I did give you a realistic and very stacked fight card for the White House card, so you can't be that bad, right? Anyways, I've attached a link where you can download the PNGs of both of the main guys in the thumbnail in the description below, so go ahead and make your own memes with them if you want to. Thanks for listening to the end, and goodbye. And don't forget, Big E didn't commit self-delete, and he's still alive and well and playing Fortnite in
Brazil.